Our thoughts and prayers go out to the Leach family, the Mississippi State football family, and to those who feel the loss of a great man, Coach Mike Leach. Coach Leach's passing has affected so many of us, even those who actually never met him, because he used the stage he was given by the game of football to impact others. It goes without saying that he was a one-of-a-kind individual. There's so much to be learned from his approach to life and to coaching the game. My daughter is a part of the Mississippi State football family. She is a junior there and works with Football Creative. I was fortunate to have met an assistant coach at Mississippi State, Eric Mealy, while he was at Washington State with Coach Leach. I first talked to him on the podcast in 2019. And while we were moving Paige onto campus in the summer of 2021, Coach Mealy told us to stop by again, and after a tour of the facility and the updates they had made, Paige talked with the DFO and then the football director of creative and walked out of the Leo Seal Jr. football complex with a job. It's something she takes great pride in, and she's been giving me updates all weekend long, and I know that the football family there was devastated by Coach's passing. While I was in Starkville in that August of 21, I was fortunate to be able to attend a practice and watch Coach Leach in action. It was impressive to watch how he and his staff taught the game. We also had the opportunity to host a Q&A with him during the National Air Raid Clinic in 2020. I gave that duty over to an assistant as I was out of town with my son on a baseball trip, but I did listen over the phone, of course. Coach Leach was known for so many of the gems he delivered and sharing his unfiltered thoughts on the game and just about anything that was asked of him, and we'll share a couple of those from a clinic that we covered this past year. First, I'd like to share a story from a podcast we recorded in 2019 with longtime Mike Leach assistant Eric Mealy. The story Coach Mealy shared on the podcast tells of the opportunity he was given by Coach Leach. So let's take a listen. I do want to touch on your journey into coaching. You have probably as interesting of a story as any that I've shared on this podcast. If you would, just talk to us about how you got to Washington State and the road to it.
It's a long-winded yet interesting story. So I'll try and give you the nuts and bolts. But I coached or played at Division III school in New Jersey. Coached there for kind of got my start there my first 2 years. Was in high school for a year with the kind of followed the head coach over to a local school and kind of got a coordinator job out of that, and then went to St. Peter's College in Jersey City. A buddy of mine, Charles Coffey, was the offensive coordinator there. He called me, come coach receivers there, and he had actually ventured out to Texas Tech. So this is going back several years ago, 2000, I guess 6-ish, something like that. And he had, got all the scripts and the practice plan, hung out for a week and kind of just, got all that air raid offense. And we came back and we installed it St. Peter's and ran it that year and had some good success. And then what happened there at St. Peter's was actually closing football. That conference kind of got disbanded and several teams kind of moved into that Pioneer League and several teams kind of folded up shop. So my wife and I moved to North Carolina. Joe Reich at Wingate University gave me a job over there on campus and spent 5 years there. Great place, great head coach, won a conference championship there and playoffs, and he's continued to do all that same stuff now. But so I was there for, 5 seasons and loved it. Cost of living great, and the weather and then the program, the whole thing was fantastic. But, Coach Leach was out of football at the time. I had met Matt Mummy, who was coaching at Davidson, kind of just down the road from us. And then, kind of met Hal as well, Hal Mummy. And, just heard about Leach through the grapevine, read his book like everybody else, I'm sure, Swing Your Sword. And he was out of coaching. So I just wrote him a letter, really off the cuff and casual, and just said, hey, kind of BS, you're out of coaching, you get back into it. I'd love to catch on with you and, I'll bust my ass for you, that kind of thing. And, didn't think much of it. And then soon we had a couple months later, I'm at a clinic, ironically, in Oregon. Chip Kelly was there, that staff, and kind of hanging out, just talking football, kind of a closed door thing. And my phone rings and it says Lubbock, Texas on there. So I'm like, what the heck is this? It's got to be Mike Leach, you know. So I step out, play the voicemail back, and the message was, Eric, Mike Leach. And that was it. So I don't know what the heck that meant. So, first chance I got, I give him a shout back. And he said, hey, if you're in Florida, let me know. So I went back to Carolina. 2 weeks later, I'm in Florida. Shoot him a text and say, hey, I'm in town. So about 8 o'clock at night, meet him down there on Duval Street, and went till probably about 5 o'clock in the morning. Little island tour in typical Coach Leach fashion. So we visited all the local restaurants and watering holes and lots of history, that type of thing. So he invited me back down that summer. So I came back down, I think it was June, and Hal and a couple of his coaches, Mason Miller, who's currently on our staff too, met him for the first time down there. It's about 7 or 8 of us, toured Jimmy Buffett's studio, fishing, staying up all night, roosters kind of waking us up. It's kind of like the Hangover movie part 4. So we did that for about 3 days, and then, went home. And then, I guess that winter is when he got hired at Washington State. So, reach out to him. I'm sure his phone's probably blown up at the time. Can't get a hold of him. So I told my wife I'm going to go book a trip out there unannounced. He knows who I am, so I'll just kind of go to the office that next day and see what the story is. So book a trip out there on a Tuesday, and he had a press conference on Tuesday to get introduced. So Wednesday morning, I texted him, hey, I'm at the Quality Inn in Pullman, which it's, that's not the ideal spring break or destination it's supposed to be, but I'm there at the Quality Inn, give me a shout, and then he had flew in and flew out back in Key West. The text kind of came back. So, I flew out there, so I'm stuck out in Pullman for a few days, with nothing to do. So I said, hey, I'll meet you back in Key West. So now I got to start tapping my resources a little bit. I had at the time we had 3 kids, and I'd already kind of chased 2 or 3 trips down at this point. I'm calling my brother and my dad, and I'm like, hey, I might have to get a little loaner from you guys. Got to get it back to Florida. I missed them out here, type of thing. So I think that's when Coach Leach realized he wasn't going to shake me at all, because I just kept coming at him. So he invited me back out about a month later. I came out for about 48 hours. Never discussed anything about a job or, what the position was or anything like that. And then I got a red eye out in the morning. It's about 10 o'clock at night, and we're at the Sangria restaurant in town. And turns around, he says, hey, job only pays this. And I know you got a pile of kids and won't be a distraction for you, but, you want the job. Absolutely, I want the job. And I kind of shake his hand and, call my wife, and she's like, all right, did we, get the money we wanted? Absolutely not. Sell the house, the car, all our furniture, and we're out of here. So that's it. What's the job? And I'm like, don't know that either, man. But we're going. So showed up after that first spring. It's in 2012. His first season here, and then came out, and first guy I see, one of our offensive line coaches at the time, was like, hey, coach, can you introduce me to his wife and just a new quarterback QC with Coach Leach. So I'm like, well, that worked out pretty good. If I could have picked a spot, kind of get my foot in the door, that was the one I wanted to do. So about 2 years into it of just, lots of long nights with Coach. He's a night owl, so, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning in the staff room watching film, talking about, do we like to post on 95 here and best pizza places in Jersey and Vikings and that kind of stuff. Do that for a couple seasons, and then they got promoted. That midway through that third year, and then that's going back about 5-6 years now. So it was a heck of a story. It's been great, but a great journey, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that he gave me.
Yeah, really interesting story, and just the persistence you had. I'm sure that's a big part of who you are and the work ethic that it took really for you to land that job, and then the sacrifices. I mean, there's a lot of guys who do that, who take those chances, who are poor for a while, and it doesn't always pay off for everybody, but so far so good for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's what I would say, man. That's one of my favorite quotes is energy and persistence conquer all things. Ben Franklin said that, and it's you got to you live your life that way. You're doing recruiting, you're doing coaching, and all that, and usually things turn out all right for you.
As I mentioned earlier, Coach Leach is known for sharing what he thinks. We've found many of these entertaining over the years, and here are 2 from the Alabama Football Coaches Association clinic this past January. In the first one, Coach Leach talks about lip readers, and in the second, he talks about catching the ball.
I'm not a particularly secretive guy. With all due respect to those of you who do this, I never do this. I never talk here because, they might read my lips. I've never met a lip reader, but evidently there's a lot of them out there because all these coaches cover their mouth, and despite the fact that during spring and in camp, they go ahead and call plays with their teams and run plays with their teams, somehow the other team they're about to play is a lot smarter. And so the lip reader, is going to immediately get the message of what you said in your terminology, which could be very different than the other guys, but in your terminology. It's like the magic bullet, okay? And then he is somehow going to tell, say, the defensive coordinator on the other team, what you called, who's thereby going to get it to the play caller, who then clearly, without any error whatsoever, is going to convey that to 10 other players, and then they're going to execute with precision, immediately pouncing on whatever it is you just called. Okay, so if you want to know about that, you're going to have to ask somebody else. These guys nowadays, their hands are all over the place. The guy thinks he's got to catch it here. The guys that drive me the craziest are the ones that start here and then do the hand flip stuff. I mean, these hands are everywhere. Their hands are utterly everywhere. Look, as much as possible, there are two ways to catch a ball. There are two. Anywhere that you can, including jumping or as low as you can go here, you want to catch it in your hands. That is the quickest way. First of all, it's the quickest way to catch it. You can catch it out in front of your body, and then you can tuck it quicker that way too, thereby getting upfield quicker. Second way, pinkies together. So it's either this or pinkies together. Okay, when do you catch with pinkies together? Well, ball over my outside shoulder, pinkies together. Too low to do this, pinkies together. Okay, and then of course there's the emergency deal too, where it's thrown way too far. Try to get both hands there, can't. You just catch it any way you can, dive, lay out, whatever. Okay, but that's an emergency situation. And if you're always having emergency situations, you're going to be a pretty shitty team. And
Finally, I want to share our Q&A with Coach Leach. We start out with an introduction from his close friend, Hal Mummy. This was right after Coach Leach won his first game at State with a big win over the defending national champion LSU Tigers. Here's the episode.
Hi, this is Coach Hal Mummy, and you are listening to the Coach and Coordinator Podcast.
On today's Coaching Coordinator Podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the big game this past weekend with the Mississippi State Bulldogs beating the LSU Tigers. And joining me to discuss a little bit about this before we get into a Q&A that we did at the National Air Raid Clinic this past summer is the godfather of the Air Raid offense, Hal Mummy. Hal, it's always great to have you here.
Oh, I appreciate it, Keith. Thanks for having me on.
Well, before we get into some of these things, I guess I just want to get your thoughts on what transpired last night as you watched that unfold.
Well, this is going to sound really arrogant, but I would have been more shocked if he hadn't won. And, I thought the setup was so great. You could just see it coming because, I've been saying for a long time, I think Mike Leach is the best coach in America. And people tend to laugh at that when I say it. But I think he's in a spot now at Mississippi State where he can get great skill people, and it's a place that has a tradition of playing great defense. And he's never really, been in those positions before, in that position where you could get both. And so I think he's going to do really well there. LSU had a lot of holes to fill, obviously, from last year's national championship team. But they still had, a lot of veteran players back and a lot of players that played backup roles in that national championship run. And so obviously they were favored playing in Baton Rouge. But I just thought it set up pretty well for Mike to I liked his quarterback a lot better than LSU's. And Costello was, he's a veteran guy, and he's although he hasn't played in the air raid before, he was just a heady guy that you could tell was probably going to take to it pretty quick, kind of similar to what Tim Couch did when he went to Kentucky.
Yes, and when we look at this, and you heard it throughout the game, the commentator saying, well, it's the same plays, they run them over and over again, and we know that about this offense, and we've seen it. People take the Y cross or the four verse. I never was an air raid coach, but we were running four verticals all the time. It was great to us. So people take parts of it, but when you look at this as a whole, it's I think the package works really good together. And you look at just the statistics from the game. They ran 9 yards total on LSU and won the football game, scored 44 points. Now, there wasn't a lot of rushing in that game overall, 54 for 89 for both teams. But the point being, though, is in a short period of time, because there was no spring ball, might have been a couple practices before things got shut down, these guys were able to get ready, prepared, and beat the defending national champs.
Well, I talked to a coach, called me during the game, and he's a guy that had always wanted to run air raid, but would never commit to the way we practice, and was always wanting to add plays and stuff like that. And he said, how do you do this? It's just amazing. What you were just saying. So little preparation, they look so good. I said, look, we're doing about a third of what everybody else is doing. So that means we get 3 times as much practice at it.
And that's exactly it. And as I was telling you, my daughter goes to Mississippi State. About a month ago, I visited, and they were practicing. And, I know Eric Mealy, running backs coach there, so he invited me out to practice. And I was excited. It was the first time I was able to watch an air raid practice. I love watching practices, seeing how people do things. And I'll tell you, it was just a model of efficiency. They did things so well. We're able to get a tremendous amount of reps. And it's not just on the plays that it would be like a 2.5-minute period working releases, and you see this whole line of 20 receivers or so getting 4 or 5 reps at releases because of the setup of practice and how quick they do things. I mean, to me, it was just, I sat there and mentally took notes the whole time and went back, when I was done, went back to my hotel room and wrote a few pages out of exactly what I saw at practice. And that's a big part of the air raid too. Like I said, we could take all those concepts, and they're great concepts, but how you practice things is a tremendous part of it. And that's what Coach Leach said after the game. It takes all week to beat somebody.
Yeah. Well, and we spent about 7 or 8 years developing all this stuff and how we practice and how we game plan and how you use the really simple plays to take advantage of find open grass, where's the grass? That was always the question. Tell me where the grass is. And so it's always better for athletes if you can keep it simple for them so they can use their athletic ability. And what you're describing right there, particularly in the receiving core in yesterday's game, I just thought the receiving core at Mississippi State was light years ahead of the ones from LSU. And, they just made play after play and on relatively simple things. So it's always best to keep that. As coaches, we like to spend a lot of time watching film and drawing stuff on the board and coming up with all these creative ideas. But usually what you're doing is you're creating chaos. And we've always had this saying that to be successful at the way we practice and play, you have to have a great capacity for boredom, because you're just going to do the same things over and over again. And you can't get bored with doing that. And you got to, try to make each rep better. So Mike Leach is probably the purest at being able to practice and stick to what, he's running. This coach that called me last night said, "So how long have y'all been doing this?" I said, "Basically what you saw is what we developed in 1991." And the reason he's successful is he hasn't changed, resisted the temptation to change.
With that, though, Coach, as you look at it, and I know you talk with Mike, I'm sure, quite a bit over the years, has the innovation really become in just getting better at practice, how we do things, how we can be more efficient? Is there a study that goes on with that?
Really, he's practicing now the way we've always practiced, or like I said, after we kind of developed everything. It took about 5 years to do that. But if you watched the 1991 Iowa Wesleyan Tigers practice, you would have seen the same things you saw watching Mississippi State. This is not complicated. This is the simpler you can keep it, and the more rep friendly you can keep it, the better you're going to be. And then it just becomes the question of plugging the right athletes into the right positions. And one of the things that I think has always made Mike successful is he can pick out quarterbacks. I've always been able to pick out quarterbacks, and a lot of our guys that worked with us, Dana Holgerson, Chris Hatcher, and people like that, Sonny Dykes, they can all do the same thing. But you look at it, we all came from the same backgrounds, and we can pick quarterbacks because we know what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going to Walmart without a list. A lot of times for recruiting, people go out there and they start looking at quarterbacks, and this guy looks good and that guy looks good, but they really don't know what they want to put the young man into once they get him, and so they end up with all these guys with varying abilities and not really knowing what they're looking for, and it's really like that at every position. But the quarterback, of course, stands out the most.
Coach, you did a tremendous job in putting together the Air Raid Certified program on CoachTube. And, in today's day and age, it's really easy to get information. I mean, we just went through a time here with the shutdown. There were probably 500 free Zoom clinics or more than that. That's okay. I think it's a great way to learn football. But at the end of the day, you got to bring something out to your team that works together, that you know how to practice. And so that's exactly what you've done. You've taken all the learning that, as you said, took at least 8 years for you guys to develop, and you've put it together into one resource. Talk to us a little bit about the Air Raid Certified program and exactly what coaches get.
Well, I'll tell you, it was really A.J. Smith's brainchild, and he came to me and asked me to do it, and he thought there was a niche there. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, we've never really, people always want to know, do you have a playbook? We've never really had a playbook. And so teaching this has always been by repetition. And so I thought AJ's idea of having these videos of every aspect of the offense, every play, every concept, every practice, every game plan, have a way to teach that to guys where they could master it. And through the years, the various places I've been, and I'm sure Mike runs into all the Air Raid guys run into this, is you have these guys come visit and they want to learn the offense. Well, they come visit for 2 days. Mm-hmm. And then they call you up and ask you to recommend them to somebody that they know the offense for a job. And so I just wanted to have a way to know that I was recommending somebody that really has studied it and knows it the way we do. And so we put together, it's 17 videos, and there's 3 tests, and it covers every aspect of the offense.
I really like what you've done too with the certification database, right? In today's day and age, I think everybody's out there now looking for, you might be looking for your next offensive coordinator and want him to be an Air Raid guy. Well, you give them that stamp of approval, right? We know that they've gone through this because the exams aren't easy, and you're not allowed to go on to the next section of the content until you passed that exam.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to pass, and we did it that way on purpose. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that if I called up somebody and said, "Hey, hire this guy to be your coordinator," that I wasn't, I wasn't just blowing smoke. So if they pass this certification, then I know they know it. And we grandfathered some guys, that I've worked with that I know the offense, and so of course I still try to help them all I can. But we've got about 500 guys in this thing now that I know air raid and know how to coach it, and they're not just guessing at how to practice it, or they're not just guessing at what drills to do, or how to game plan. All this is it's a complete offense, and it's a complete system. And so I tried to take my time and teach it just like I would to the players. And then, like I said, you got to jump over some hurdles before you can finish.
Well, I think it's, to me, when I saw you guys do this, I talked to AJ when you guys were first coming out with it. I thought this is what the game needs right now. Some place that you can, number one, work yourself up in this profession with some accreditation behind you. And I think you guys have done an outstanding job there. For our coaches out there who are looking for this, you could go to airraidcertified.com. I'll put the link in the show notes. Coach, it's always great to catch up with you. And again, thanks for taking the time here, as well as sharing some of the Q&A from this past summer's National Air Raid Clinic with Mike Leach.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate it, and really wish you a lot of luck on the new podcast.
Well, we're going to kick this over to our guest host for that day. This was a day back in June, and it was a Saturday morning, I remember, and I couldn't do it. We had something come up with, baseball had just started for my son. It was a time where he's going through recruiting. He needed to get everything on video, and I really had to be there. I was out there in the morning, and reception was really bad. It was basically in the middle of a cornfield. The name of the field we played at was Field of Dreams, and it was literally like that. It was on this guy's farm in the middle of nowhere. Pretty cool setting, but I knew I wouldn't be able to do this and be able to get on the phone and have good reception, and I didn't want to hurt the quality of it, so I did call our producer, Peter Gumas, and Peter, you did an excellent job, and when I asked you, I said, "You want to talk to the Pirate today?" You were like, "Really?" So what was your reaction when I asked you that?
Yeah, Keith, you hit me up that morning, and I was a little bit shocked and kind of flustered there for a minute, thinking, "Oh my God, what? I get to interview the Pirate today? This is going to be awesome." But it went great. I was really excited to do it as a longtime college football fan. I had just a great time getting to sit down and talk to him. It was really kind of a dream come true for me in some ways.
Yeah, it was a really cool interview that you guys did, and I know. This was actually a Zoom clinic, but Coach wasn't available via Zoom. I'm not sure. He may have been in Key West, but it was just a Q&A audio, so it works really well here for the podcast. Now, we did not put the entire show up here. Actually, this is something that is in the Air Raid certification. All of it is over there, so you want to hear the rest of it, you could catch it over there. But just some really cool answers off the cuff. None of this really planned for Coach.
Yeah, Coach was great. You never really know what you're going to get when you ask Coach Leach a question. You can get anything from, I think one of his answers was, you show me mine, I'll show you yours, to, anything really football related. So it was really great. Again, really interesting to hear what he had to say.
All right, well, let's take a listen to it.
Coach Mike Leach on, new head coach at Mississippi State. Coach, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, I'm glad to be on. These times are such that, people are screwing around with computers all the time and doing all this other stuff, which is frustrating to everybody. But no, it's good to get together with a bunch of people. And then obviously the air raid concepts are fascinating to all of us. And so it's great to have the opportunity to talk to everybody far and wide.
Coach, what do you look for in a graduate assistant?
The biggest thing would be somebody that's very passionate about football, where football is very important to them.
a guy that comes as close to needing football rather than just wanting to be a football coach. Yeah, you know, when I got into it, I did it for free for years. You need somebody that's willing to do it for free. That's not necessarily what you're going to pay them, but you know, somebody's got to be willing to pay dues, and the best ones are. You know, and I've thought for some time that, you know, everybody says who's the best football coach. Well, you know, somebody with a lot of resources, they win a lot of Super Bowls, like, you know, Belichick, who's clearly a good coach, or, you know, some college coach or something. But, you know, odds are extremely high. The best football coach in the country is a high school coach. I mean, think about how many numbers of high school coaches there are. I mean, it's a crazy number. So odds are that, you know, whoever's, and it's hard to gauge because the only way you can test it is, you know, if you have all the same people working with equal resources, you know, who comes out on top. So it's awfully tough to measure. And so no matter what, it'd be mythical. Odds are extremely high. It's a high school coach out there somewhere that's the best coach in the country. But one thing that is difficult is coaching college on the front end, unless, you know, right place, right time, you know, player with a relationship or such with your coach in a fashion that where you got to be a student assistant and you get elevated. I mean, it's hard to get those jobs, and they're kind of limited, but and it's hard to describe how. One thing is refuse to leave, be there, refuse to leave, prove yourself useful. Anything that they want you to do it. And don't let some other guy do it just because you're lazy or you're thinking about, you know, that's not exactly what you want to do, because the more useful you are and the more useful that you are and the more inexpendable you become, as in all of a sudden the head coach and the coordinators go, okay, well, you know, one of these guys is leaving or somebody's got to go. Well, you want to make sure that they don't think you're the guy that should go, because you do too much stuff and it's a too big a pain in the ass for them if you leave. And, you know, that's what puts you in the position to elevate. And then, but yeah, I mean, if you're not willing to do it for free and move around at a moment's notice, college probably isn't the key. And that's why I think, besides the fact numerically, I think high school, the best coach in America is a high school coach somewhere that he himself probably doesn't even know he's the best coach in America. I think they get a certain amount of talent right off the top, because you graduate from college, you can go to high school and you get a job, and then pretty soon you got a pickup truck or a boat or something, and then a wife, and then it's awfully tough to go do it for free like you have to in college. And I think in a lot of cases, you know, the talent draw to that level's a little better too.
Coach, can you walk us through your in-season practice schedule? Do you practice specific plays Tuesday or Wednesday in routes on air / quick game? How does that differ from fall camp?
From fall camp, we kind of go a third of the offense each day. During the season, Sunday we check plays. And this is after everybody knows stuff, but Sunday we check plays and execute them out of the various sets. Monday's off. Tuesday is we work a third of the quick game. We work, or I'm sorry, not a third. We work a half of the quick game. We work a half of the 5-step drop game. We work the screens that are in the game plan that week. The screens are any gadgets we put in. And then Wednesday, we work the other half of the quick game. And I usually split it. One day we'll do the ones that incorporate the backs so that they're there. The other day we don't, so that they can go do drills or work inside. So one day on the quick game is the back incorporated quick game, the other's the non-back incorporated quick game. So you cover both halves of that. And then it's the other half of the 5-step drop, and then red zone and goal line.
Next question. What is the difference in how you teach the quick game footwork versus the drop back footwork with the QBs? How do you teach them their drops?
Well, if they're under center, the most important thing is to get a big first step. Most important thing is to get it, because that sets up everything else. Get a big first step and get your hips open. So, you know, if it's a short drop, just one long, two short, and you want it quick, and you want the last step I'd have to show you really. So you take one long step, then you take another gather step, and then the third step you would want in a right-handed quarterback just slightly to the right, because you want your front hip slightly open, ever so slightly open, so your line of vision isn't just closed off as in I can only see half the field. You want that by having that your right foot slightly to the right when it finishes it up, and instead of straight behind you, you want it slightly to your right. Then it'll help open your front hip, and you can see the left side better rather than just be closed off. So I like that. I think that's important. And then if it's a deep drop, well, then it's 3 long, 2 short. But that finish with the 2 short at the end, I think, is pretty important as far as because you don't want the quarterback all strung out. You want his hips or you want his feet under his shoulders. And then with so many guys out of the gun, and we're out of the gun all the time, then for the short drop, you just reset your feet. But resetting your feet, you want the one foot, the left foot kind of square, so you're settled up and under your shoulders, and then your right foot just slightly to the right if you're a right-handed quarterback, so your hips slightly open to the left so that you can see a better range in the field, keeping the ball up. Okay, and then the deeper drop, 5-step drop, then you're taking 1 long step, 2 short if you're in the gun. And but I do think I think really the most important part of it, you know, there's everybody's got all these steps. You know, the 20 most important things on pass drops, which is you know, the 20 most important things on pass drops, 15 of which are bullshit. You know, because nobody's sitting there trying to remember 20 things. You tell your quarterback that, you either got the wrong quarterback or he's going to look at you like you're screwed. And so what I think is important, it's important to have a big first step. It's important to finish with your left hip slightly open so you can see a good range of the field. And if you throw your left and you finish, you'll naturally finish in a smooth lined up fashion. And then to the right, you can see well anyway. And then, but the other thing, the end of the setup, I mean, you want your feet under your shoulders, not all sprawled out, and then you want your back foot slightly to the right if you're a right-handed quarterback. And the other thing that, since we're talking about feet, but as important as anything is to keep the ball up.
What are you looking for when evaluating a QB in the recruiting process?
Accurate. Be accurate. You've got to be accurate. Make good decisions. You can coach your way through some of that, but he's got to have a sense of football and what the others are doing. The most important quality of a quarterback is that he elevates the play of the guys around him. I mean, that's his job, and it's a very important job. Elevate the skills of the players around him. Some of it is having enough presence to be or charisma or whatever to inspire those guys. And I've had guys do it differently. Well, in the last year, Gardner Minshew was kind of a fiery guy, really passionate. And everybody could feel it meant so much to him that they wanted to follow. And then Anthony Gordon was more of a laid-back guy that, in the most pressure situations or something negative happened, I mean, he was calm and he was the same guy. One good description is be the same guy all the time because those other players are drawing from it. And then, but the 5 skill things, accurate, make good decisions. And I think they need to start out accurate. I think you can make them more accurate, but I don't think you can flat out take them from inaccurate to accurate. At least not very easily. You're better served finding somebody that already is accurate. And then from there, there's the quick feet, which I think is the most important as far as having a sense of the middle of the pocket and being able to adjust in the middle of the pocket. Graham Harrell was really good at staying in that little bitty sliver of space until all the space was dried up just before delivering the ball. He was a master of that. He ran worse than most quarterbacks that I've had, but he was really good as far as shuffling and identifying. I have this much space. Okay, now I have this much. Now I have this much. Now I have this much. Ball's gone. And then there's strong arm, and then fast, and all are important qualities. I don't see, in the NFL Hall of Fame, almost none of them have all 5 of those things. They all would like to, but almost none of them have all 5. I would say Patrick Mahomes might be the closest that I've ever seen to having all 5. If you think about it, but everybody can think of whoever their favorite quarterback is or a great quarterback. They generally don't have all 5. But what they do have is the ability to elevate and get the most out of the players around them. And the guy that can do that the best, he's the best quarterback.
All right. As a high school coach, we usually only have the previous week's film of our opponents. How would you go about scouting the defense when the opponent they were facing does not run an offensive system that is similar to spread or more particularly the air raid?
I don't know the rules, but I would cut deals with teams that run spreads that team are going to play before you play them, and play. I'll show you mine if you show me yours, and I'd try to do that, and then if you have a good base and a good collection of plays that you're running, and they should be able to apply to a variety of situations. I would try to run core plays. Like, it's not uncommon to run a play, say one of the 90s, or people call them the 60s, it doesn't matter. It's some passing play. And I've literally lined up, well, if they play this, we're going to hit this guy. If they play that, we'll probably end up hitting the other guy. If they play something else, we'll hit the other guy. In other words, you want something that holds up, And then the other thing, to the extent you can, and our quarterback can check from goal line to goal line. Well, if you can't, or you don't have a guy that can do that, still you want to have some kind of leeway to get out of bad situations and to capitalize on good situations. They empty the box. You want to be able to run it at them. And that's a good situation. You want to attack it right then, right there.
Can you talk a little bit about how you game plan and script, or decide what to game plan and script?
Well, I think the most important thing is at some point you've got to decide what is in your package. What is important to you? What are the core plays that you're going to run? And within those core plays, you're better off with too few, not too many. You're only as good as whatever you can execute, no matter how good of an idea it is, or how good somebody else can run it, or how good it looks on the board. You're only as good as what you can execute. And that's the most important thing, is worry about what you can do. So you got that core of plays, and you want ones that attack the whole field, and you want ones that get the ball in everybody's hands. And within that context, if that happens, then you want to plug in and apply those to whoever your opponent is. And then can you do something different, or a wrinkle or something? Yeah, I think you can do one or two each week, but not more than one or two. And ideally, the wrinkles you put in, hopefully there was something you kind of started working on a couple weeks before. And I'm not talking about a wholesale brand new play generally. I'm talking about, maybe a wrinkle or something dressed up differently. And then, as the defense changes the different parts of the field, we'll try to change and adjust around them. But with that said, we want plays that hold up to a lot of different defenses. And then, we want to have the ability to fire a play out there and react to it. But, and we do a real good job with our scout team as far as duplicating what somebody's going to see and that sort of thing.
Coach, when you last ran the air raid in the SEC, it's basically unknown and gave the league a lot of problems defensively. How creative will you have to be with your system now that the league is more familiar with it?
I don't know. I don't think they are more familiar with it. I mean, those guys that coached clear back then, they're all gone. Although the air raid and people have seen the air raid philosophy a little more. There's not a lot of it in the SEC.
Yep.
And then of course LSU had a big time throwing with some really quality players last year.
Yep.
The thing is, though, in the end, football's a game of execution, and we'll just worry about executing the best that we can.
On behalf of all of us here, we want to thank you very much for sitting down. I know it's not the easiest thing to, take a bunch of questions right one after the other, but we appreciate you sitting there and doing it for us.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate it. Wish I could see everybody.
Thank you very much, Coach. Good luck this year.
All right. Thank you. You guys too. Good luck to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Whether it's been talking to my daughter, or the conversations I've had with coaches this week, or the large outpouring of thoughts, prayers, thank yous, and stories in the media and social media, it's easy to see the impact that a coach has. Coach Leach's impact is on the grandest scale. He touched so many lives. He helped so many people. And the game and the world are better for him having played his part. Thank you, Coach Leach. You will be missed.